And we're live. All fancy.
Quite.
Fancy with our new soundboard.
Welcome to Vitality Check.
Welcome. Welcome all. And
There's a glaring absence today.
yes, a welcome absence today.
We know how you all feel.
Yes. A little round of applause. Someone who you might not be able to tell is not here.
Mm-hmm.
Guy takes up a lot of space, that guy.
He does. He does.
Mainly his head. Oh, not here to defend himself.
It's the best time.
Yes. Low blows today.
And you might be missing a few weeks from now, too. We'll have to see.
Oh, yes. Well,
There's always that one, though, right? That's just doesn't quite pull their own weight.
No. He's heavy to carry all the time.
It's a freeloader, I think.
Freeloader. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't guessed yet, we're talking about one of our co-hosts, Kevin Longpre.
Mm-hmm.
He is not with us today, and he might not be with us for a while. Right.
Exactly.
Well,
He didn't put into concept what we're going to talk about today.
Exactly. I think that's a good segue into today's episode. So what do you got for us, Jason?
Well, today...
First of all, welcome back, Jason.
Thank you.
Jason Turnbull, one of our co-hosts here at the Vitality Check.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna quarterback this one today.
Sounds good.
I am, if you're listening, I am Dr. Sean Landry. I'm one of the practice members here at Vitality. If you're listening to the Vitality Check, welcome. You can check back weekly. This is a weekly podcast we do where we talk all things health, interview some amazing rock stars in the community right here in the West Island of Montreal. So we're a clinic located in Pointe Claire, a multidisciplinary clinic for those of you tuning in, and we're happy you're here. So today, Jay, what do we got? What do you got for us?
Yeah, well, because we're doing a bit of a men's health initiative for our own clinic and for a little movement we're doing on our own social media, we thought that we'd bring that today to the Vitality Check podcast. So today we want to talk a lot about, what's the secret? What can we do to stay strong and lean and fit and, as the decades go on from our 40s and 50s and beyond, and
most people think it's cardio, right?
Yeah, most people think it's cardio, and not that cardio is not great. Obviously, we'll talk a bit about that as well. But the biggest thing that we've been really hearing a lot in the last few years is just the importance of strength training.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd like to talk about that today a bit, just to go over, why it's so good for us as we age, how often you should be doing it, when to seek advice and all that stuff. But it's become more clear and clear with research how it's the missing link. It's often what people don't do as well in our 40s and 50s. We tend to, a lot of us can say, oh yeah, back in high school I did this, or I worked out for a while. But the vast majority of people, that at least we see clinically, or I do clinically, they get away from that, and partially because they don't enjoy it, so they do anything they can not to lift weights, including some pretty crazy exercise classes, which are awesome. But we want to explain and help kind of share with you guys why it is so important, and hopefully that will be informative and might be the catalyst some people need to get into the gym.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Life does get busy, and I was listening to an interesting stat where they said of the 350 million Americans, it's actually interesting, approximately 50 million had a gym membership, right? So this is, I guess, in one of the census that they've done. Of those, there was a small percentage, I think it was like less than 10%, that were actually active, right, in their gym membership. So people might have had the gym membership, pay the monthly fee, but don't show up. So they're about 10%. And then from that, I think it went down to 4% of those 10 actually lift weights, right? So people go and they might do other things, right? Might do
the elliptical,
cardio, the elliptical, right? They might use the gym, stretching, yoga, which are all good things. We're not saying that they aren't. But isn't that interesting? So from 50 million down to like 4%, it was interesting how many people actually lift weights when it's all said and done. So, and as we see, all the research is demonstrating that it is literally the fountain of youth, right? So I always say this to my patients. It's so funny, you know. Our role here is to withstand gravity for as long as we possibly can, right? And the best way to do that, we eventually we all lose. That's the paradox of this whole thing, right? Eventually we all get pulled into the earth. But the stronger you are, excuse me, the stronger you are, the longer you can withstand gravity. It's as simple as that, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's also something that one of the keys for muscle mass is that it's unfortunately, if we don't do anything, if we don't intervene, it starts to naturally decline with age. And, you know, if you did weight train, I talked about that group earlier. If you did do weight training in your teens and your 20s and stuff, and you get away from it and you come back, our body has a memory. Like it actually comes back faster. That lean muscle mass you had built at one time will come back faster as well. So our body's kind of crazy like that. But yeah, so there's you know one of the key benefits we'll talk about is something called sarcopenia, and to avoid sarcopenia. So that is the natural loss of muscle mass as we age. I think we saw that it even starts with some research. We'll say it'll start in your 30s,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems to accelerate more in your 40s and beyond. So, and the typical stats I think will show that you'll lose 3 to 5% of your muscle mass per decade,
Mm-hmm.
which is reversible with weight training,
Yeah.
right? And
So you will save most of that with adequate weight, with the appropriate amount of weight training, which is really cool because I don't think we've actually studied, or we haven't had, you know, a group that has known about this information for you know for as long as we have now, right? So it's looking back, I don't know if we didn't know the effects that weight training had on the body, right? So you know we had an idea, but it wasn't actually studied. So it'll be interesting to see as we age, as we go through life, you know, how these things play out, right? So.
and I also find it's quite something when you just look around your neighborhood. If you
Mhm.
look at some people in the last couple decades of their life, it makes me think of the gym stat you just shared.
Yeah.
Most often, you'll see people as they get older age, you'll get one of two, right?
Yeah.
They're very thin,
Yeah.
with very little muscle mass, very bony. You'll see with like maybe more like like a
Yeah.
an untrained a look, or the opposite, someone that's very heavy and overweight,
Mhm.
and which is part of the Western culture right now anyway. But when you do see someone in their 70s and 80s that is very muscular, they stand out,
Oh yeah.
right? They're a little more rare, almost like
Yeah.
your percentage of a percentage that go to the gym and work out. But more often than not, I wonder now if we would have tapped them on the shoulder and asked them.
Yeah.
You can pretty much guarantee that's the case, right?
All
So,
right. So let's dive in. Why is lifting weights so beneficial to us, Jay? What are some of the key points that we can?
well, the first one I kind of said, sarcopenia, I think is probably one of the bigger ones
Yeah.
because you want to have that muscle mass so that you can be active, right? So if you want to play with your grandchildren and do different things, you have to maintain lean muscle mass. You have to have the strength to be able to do that. I think the second key we can talk about is our bones, and our third
Mm.
would be our metabolism. So
Okay.
as far as the bony system goes, lifting weights is a great way to prevent fractures
Yes.
and also your risk, men and women more, of osteoporosis.
So the very same process that's happening to the muscle wasting would be happening to bone, right? If you're not lifting weights, engaged in physical activity, right?
Exactly.
So
So
sarcopenia would be for the muscles, and then osteoporosis, right?
yeah,
Osteopenia would be for the bones, right?
exactly. Osteoporosis can be a little bit genetic as well. But yes, there are ways you can challenge ourselves to to slow down and hopefully prevent osteoporosis, which is like weakening of the bone. So you can picture like the spongy part of the bone becoming very brittle, so that as we age, that's why it's not great when you fall as someone who's elderly, because their risk of fracture is very high.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who was weight training would most likely have or not most likely, will have
A
less
better bone
a
density.
better bone
Yeah.
density and less incidence of fracture.
And that happens for twofold, right? One is the axial loading of the skeletal spine itself, right?
Yeah,
Will stimulate osteoblasts, right? And you'll get strengthening of the bones. So just picture like where force is applied, the bone will resist the force and will grow strong. And then the other one you're mentioning just earlier was the tensile forces, right? So the actual levers, right? So the muscles on the bone and different pulling that takes place. So they'll not only will the weightlifting, like when we think of the axial loading, so like you can picture someone doing a squat, so they're loading the bar on their back, and then the
So that's
bones, yeah, exactly, the bones are resisting that force as you take it through range of motion. But then let's say you're even doing a bicep curl, for example. Well, the tension on the opposing tension on the muscle group, so the bicep, right, and the insertions of the tendons will actually pull and create other forces that also remodel your bones, right?
exactly. I like it,
Yeah.
Sean. I like the technicality. That's so
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So, like Sean was saying, every day, no matter what we do, our muscles and bones are constantly breaking down and replacing with new cells.
Yep.
So, like you said, for bones, osteoclasts will break it down and break down old bone. Osteoblasts come in and produce new bone. So, yes, the loading will do that. So, if you were to take, let's say you take your femur, which is your thigh bone, and you take an X-ray of your femur, and then you start to run or weight train for 3 days a week and come back and re-x-ray that bone 6 weeks later, you will see differences in the bone density itself.
Hmm.
Like Sean was saying, it's called
Bone is
Wolff's law.
living, right?
Yeah, it's called Wolff's law. Our body reacts to the stresses we impose upon it. So if we introduce a new stimulus where we're running and we're putting those compression forces through our femur, as well as, like Sean had said, those muscles, which are levers, they have two attachment points pulling on the bone. Our muscles create motion, so they, as the lever shortens and moves, those tendons pull on the bone and lay down more bone. So you'll see that an X-ray change within a little of 6 weeks. You'll see how there's more density
Yep.
along those lines of stress that we're now challenging our body to use.
Now, also from a therapeutic and a preventative viewpoint, now remember this law, right? So Wolff's law. Well, this is also happening with improper biomechanics, right? So let's say you have a knee, and this is where it comes to seeing a professional once in a while, getting some care, looking at your alignment, looking at the way your biomechanics, looking at the way your body moves, especially when you're weight training, right? So this is what we see you wanna seek out a good therapist, because what would happen if you have improper joint mechanics and you're applying force over time, the area that's getting more loading can lay down like what we would call like osteophyte formation or lipping and spurring. And it's the body's natural reaction to the force being applied. So that's Wolff's law, not to your advantage, right? So
Exactly.
it's like a catch 22, because if you let that go on long enough, right, your body says, "Ooh, this is a force that's damaging to me because it's not the proper biomechanics," and it will eventually fuse it over time, right? It'll take away your ability to move. So, we see this law also with skin, right? If you have a shoe that rubs funny, well, your body starts to lay down a callus. It says, "Ooh, I got to protect that area." It's irritated a bit, so it'll lay down skin calluses. I like to do pull-ups all the time, so I have some calluses on my hands. But that's just the amazing ability of the body to respond to the stress, right? So you pick the stress. That's the most important thing, right? You pick the exercises you want to do. So then you influence how your body lays down muscle and reinforces its bone. And that's basically, that sums it up in a nutshell,
Absolutely.
right?
And that's the importance, like Sean said, if you have some biomechanical issues, to A, get them assessed and treated, and B, if you're not familiar with being in the gym, to get help, like to find a personal trainer, a kinesiologist, someone that you know and trust or have good recommendations for, and we can certainly help steer you guys in that direction if need be, to then make sure that you're doing said exercises properly, because you start putting a lot of load over your head or something, bad things can happen if you're not using proper technique and doing it safely and progressing kind of right. Okay, so I guess maybe the third key we talked about just briefly is metabolism. So as we get up there in age, these pounds can accumulate and they kind of sneak up on all of us. So, lifting weights is a great way to keep your metabolism in check. So, how does it do that?
Yeah, so muscle is probably one of your biggest endocrine influencers, right? So it's some would call, I know recently, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, we were talking about her, or I don't know if we mentioned her today, but she is a great resource for all this stuff, and she kind of says, I think it is the biggest endocrine gland. She calls the skeletal system.
The
Just
musculoskeletal
the
system. Okay. Okay.
musculoskeletal system. So it directly influences the symphony orchestra that is your endocrine system, the hormones that your body secretes, the peptides that your body secretes, and then how your body utilizes them. Right. So, um, Yeah, it's fascinating, right? So the more muscle mass you have, right, the higher the basal metabolic energy expenditure. So that at a basic level, living, breathing, surviving, right, you need a certain amount of energy. And the more lean muscle mass you have, the more efficient you are, and the better you utilize energy, right? Different forms of energy. So it's pretty fascinating, but it's so worth it to lift weights and put on some lean muscle mass.
And it's why you might not see those results right away. So, I know some people come in and, I have had some women coming in, well, I don't want to weight train. I don't want to get too bulky. But,
Mm.
I think there's 100% of men that wish they'd be able to get too bulky by working out a few days a week. It
Yeah.
doesn't really work like that. But, like Sean was saying, like our muscles, like if you go for like a DEXA scan or get these testings, like muscle weighs more than fat. So it's more dense. You can't just look at the number on the scale. And often when someone incorporates more of a weight training approach to losing weight, if that's what they want to do, which is one of many reasons you can start weight training, is that you may not see that initial kind of change, right? Because you're changing your composition. If you went for a DEXA scan, you could actually get the composition. You would see it, but you might not just see it based on the number on the scale. And that's like Sean said, but if you can get ahead of it and you can get that muscle mass up, so you've got more lean muscle mass, then yes, they're like your nightlights. They're always burning more. That's why these compound lifts, which we'll do that later, that's why you want to train these muscles because they're just burning. Their energy requirements are higher 24 hours a day.
So when we think about longevity, also we think about as I mentioned, the hormonal system, but one of the most important ones would be testosterone, right? So again, the more lean muscle mass you have, the more you lift weights, the more testosterone you secrete, the younger you feel, right? Everything is the better you sleep, the better you recover. The higher your libido, like all these things are influenced by testosterone, the hormones that we secrete. Um, and that's also the play between cardio, right? Because I remember reading this recently, but the more cardio you do, actually, the lower your testosterone, right? So, because of different energy demands and again, different body mass index, so lean muscle mass, essentially, right? This we can't stress more. The more muscle you have, the more efficient you are, the better your hormone profile, and vice versa.
And also probably the best way to have long-term success.
Mm-hmm.
Because stats also clearly show like anyone can lose weight.
Yeah.
It's whether or not you can keep it off. And if you were just to go in and change your diet and not change your exercise levels and just diet and cut calories and try to cut the calories in versus calories out, you will lose weight
Yep.
for a while.
For a while.
And then you'll hit a plateau, right? So usually about within 3 months, you'll hit a plateau where you just like, at some point, it's like, well, how many more calories can I cut? Your body learns that it's being fed less. It adapts to the new diet you're taking, but you're not making any change. So all of a sudden, 1,600 calories a day doesn't work. So you go down to 1,400 calories, and then that works for a little bit, and then that no longer works anymore.
Yeah.
So by weight training and exercising, you are increasing your caloric demand. So your body has to support that. But then you can build up so that you can actually, well, now I can still eat that much
Yeah.
as long as I weight train. So it ends up giving you a longer term success as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good to be strong, right? I always say it's like, this is really important. So we talked about falling, right? But let's say you fall. How about getting up off the ground, right? So the stronger you are, and I think they have actual longevity. They say better predictor than your blood pressure is your grip strength. This is actually really interesting. And so grip strength, I would say grips and hips, hip strength and grip strength, right? So um, can you get out of a chair without using your hands, right? Can you hold on to things? Can you pull yourself up from the ground? These things are indicators of longevity, and you can tell by just the way when I guess like a good professional will be able to just the way you shake someone's hand, right? You can feel whether someone's strong or not. So, anyways, those are the really key things to remember. I guess when I talk grips and hips also not just the ability to get up off the ground, but the ability to have full range of motion in your hip as
Exactly.
well, right? So we talk about
It's the mobility part of that
the
equation,
mobility
really.
and the strength, right? So the strength through range of motion actually, which is really important. So
And a great source for that, if anyone's interested, is a book by Dr. Kelly Starrett and
yep,
his wife. I can't remember her first name.
yeah,
I think it's one of the most recent books called Built to Move.
yep,
And I think there's maybe think there's like 10 different tests they put you through. One of them is the ability to get off the floor from a cross-legged
Cross-legged
position,
position.
and then you score different points based on whether you need any assistance at all, one hand, two hands, chair, or whatever. And they have lots of mobility things, and it's an easy read and a great indicator to see how you're doing now. And the book's also a great resource to say, well, if this is where you're at, this is what you can do to get better, so that you can kind of extrapolate into the future from there.
All right, what are some things we should
Do? Yeah, let's
should
do some do's.
Okay.
Well, I think number one is you should focus on compound lifts.
Yeah, for someone who's just getting started, right? What should they focus on?
So compound lifts for the reason is that they
Explain a compound lift.
yeah. So compound lift is something like a squat, a deadlift, a press, like an overhead press, a pull up. Something that involves multiple muscle groups.
Yeah. Versus an isolation.
Versus an isolation would be a bicep curl or a tricep
Tricep.
extension or a quads extension or a hamstring curl, where you're isolating one particular muscle. Still a great way to train said muscle. There's no doubt about that. But doing a compound lift, like let's say a squat, where you're using your hamstrings and your quads and your glutes and your back, and you're using your shoulder mobility, you're using a lot of different muscles. So that recruits a lot more muscles, so a much higher caloric demand for you. You're training more muscle than one, so you can get more bang for your buck. You could literally go into the gym and do 4 or 5 compound exercises and be done for the day. And also, a lot of those compound lifts we talked about, they tend to target some of these really big muscles, as opposed to doing a small little muscle group. You're getting the big mover muscles. Those are the ones that require the most energy. Those are the ones that are help keep us grounded and resist the force of gravity against us. So that is a great way to start your weight training journey.
Couldn't agree more. Now, compound exercises can be, there can be a lot of skill involved in these.
Yeah.
So this is, again, where we can't stress enough, find a reputable professional. If you need help, we know some in the area. Work with someone. You might need, in order to build up your strength, you might need to do some isolation exercises to begin your journey, in order to then do some compound exercises. And that's where a professional will help evaluate. They'll look at your range of motion. They'll look at your weaknesses. They'll look at your mobility issues, right? And then they'll design a program to progress you through that. But yes, compound exercises, even those can be scaled back, right? So you could start, if you can't squat yet, well, you could start, everyone can sit down into a chair. So there are ways of progressing towards a barbell squat, or a barbell squat might not be okay for your shoulder mobility. So you might be able to do a goblet squat or different types of lunges, right? There are other ways of training the legs. You don't necessarily have to do the specific ones. And that's where, seek out a great professional. But just remember, some of these movements can be very, they take some skill, right? Some coordination, muscular coordination, just movement patterning. So really, really start slow. Right, that's our main goal. Start slow, and then as you see, then we're going to ask you to progress. Right,
well, there's nothing worse than getting excited about something and then getting injured.
Exactly.
And then you can't do it at all. So, like anything else, start slow.
Yep.
Do the basics and build from there.
See where you're at. Listen to your journey. Right, yours is different from someone else's. Right, so and make sure you have a good communication with your trainer or with your healthcare provider. Right?
So I think the second do would be more talk about frequency. I think it'd be probably beneficial to most people if they train at least 3 days per week.
Yeah.
I mean, not much has to be said about this. It's just consistency over time, right? The more that we do it and we get engaged, and you want to train, push hard, and then you want to have an adequate amount of time off and rest to let your body recover, right? So that's when we actually build, is when we're in the recovery phase. So you're making sure then that you're getting enough rest at night. We'll talk about diet stuff afterwards. Getting enough rest and drinking enough fluids. But you want to challenge your body, and then likewise you want to recover and nourish it properly and let it do its thing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Just as far as exercise goes or movement, we definitely encourage you to move every day. But if you are engaged in lifting weights,
Yes.
that's like Jason said, you do need time in between. So you need time to rest and recover. Lifting weights, as Jason said, is breakdown, and then the time away from the gym is recovery. So, but you hear a popular term nowadays, they say active recovery. Listen, go for a walk, do some yoga on your off days, ride your bike, get out. We want you to move. We want you to move every day. Every day we should be moving because that's what we're meant to do.
Well, that's the
But
whole step count stuff, and get
yes,
your 8,000 or
yeah,
10,000 in
yeah,
a day. Absolutely, this is more specific to just the weight training
yeah.
part. But that does not. You'll do better even if you follow what Sean's saying.
And, and Jay was talking. We were chatting earlier about different kind of like how it could look, right? So let's say you are weight training 3 days a week. You know,
Yeah, 3 days a week. I think if you're just doing the three, I think the research pretty clearly shows you're best if you do like a full body workout where
yeah,
you're getting some upper body, some lower body, some core. You're definitely addressing the major muscle groups from head to toe. Anything beyond that, as soon as you get into 4 or 5 days a week, I think you can see you're still able to do the full body. Maybe at four, I probably wouldn't do more than that. But if you get into 4 or 5, then most people will start commonly talking about a split where you'll do like 2 days of upper body and 2 days of lower body, or you'll do a push pull split.
chest bra. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's more for people who've been training for a while, which is totally fine. And like yeah, that's
The science of weight training can go all over the place. So
for
just
sure.
let's keep it simple for now. Compound lifts, right? If you can, if you're ready for them, 3 days a week, right?
Yeah,
And just get it in, right? Get it
exactly,
in.
exactly.
Recover on your off days. Some light stretching, light mobility, right? Like we say, dogs and cats. What's the first thing they do when they wake up? They're always stretching, right? The yoga world stole all the stretches from them, right? Downward dog, upward dog. So just make sure you're doing that. Walk, move, and yeah, pretty good. What's the last one?
The last do would just be, making sure your nutrition's in check, which I think we all often see too. As soon as I know that I used to, when I got back into the gym a few times, like you get in the gym, and the next thing you do is you start to watch what you put in your mouth,
Hmm.
and vice versa. You start eating better, and oftentimes people will look for other ways they can improve by doing more exercise.
Yeah.
So one of the
Research
big
is
things,
showing right now. What's the one to
pro-
focus on?
protein.
Protein.
Protein seems to be one to focus on. Um, a lot of talking like for the guidelines we receive are really what you need to have to not be nutritionally deficient
Yeah,
as opposed to optimal.
but we want to be optimal.
But we want to be optimal. And most of these, the podcasts and the people we follow, Sean had mentioned Dr. Gabriel Lyon, and there's Dr. Peter Attia or Huberman.
Yeah.
Most of them say the same thing. The general guideline would be to consume about a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight.
Hmm.
So, meaning if you are a 200-pound male that would like to weigh 185 pounds, you would attempt to consume roughly 185 grams of protein per day.
Yeah.
Um,
And it is doable, right?
it's doable,
You
and you don't have
span
to
it
be right on
across your
that.
meals, right?
Exactly, exactly. And there's so much stuff you can find. There's again, just like we mentioned, we can recommend trainers. There's also people who know in nutrition, dietitians or naturopaths that can definitely help people meet those goals if that's something they struggle with and are not familiar with. And also, there's people that have different diets, right? Where they eat differently than others because they don't eat meat, or there's vegetarian. So that can be more challenging to hit those goals. So certainly, there's lots of healthcare professionals that can help guide you on that path to
Definitely.
to make sure you're eating enough to be
Yeah,
sufficient.
but definitely you need to fuel the recovery. That's essentially it. So protein, when we look at protein, it's the building blocks of our muscles, right? So if you are engaged in weightlifting and you want to replace your tissues with good tissues, right? Then you need protein, and obviously good sources. We always say, or as organic as possible, pasture raised if you are, and if you're eating any of the ruminants, right? If you're eating any of make sure that they're pasture raised. Um, Kind of, it's pretty simple: meat, fish, eggs, seasonal fruits and veggies, right? And then you filter in your complex carbohydrates. And what we say is the least amount processed as possible. Look to do it the old world way, the way things were done with love, minimal processing. If you can't eat organic, there's some great resources. We call it the Clean 15 or the Dirty Dozen, right? So you'd avoid the Dirty Dozen, try and buy organic, and then with the Clean 15, you can usually buy the non-organic. Those you can look up online. But yeah, definitely the most important thing is protein when weightlifting, right? So, but those are some simple things. because even food, like I say, just as weightlifting can get very, very kind of specific based on your needs and complex if you want it to be, food can as well, right?
But you make it
You
as
know,
complex as you want it to be, for
and
sure.
it can go, like we say, everywhere from beliefs with food to
Yeah,
culture with food to,
exactly.
so good food. The way, I remember this book was so good. It was written by Michael Pollan. It was just simple. It was like, the way your grandmother would cook, right? If we have time to do that. There are right nowadays, I mean, there's, food prep companies out there as well. So, you
I've
know,
heard a lot of people say, just shop the borders of the grocery store,
yeah, borders of the grocery store, exactly.
avoid the aisles.
But definitely protein to fuel your muscles. That's so important. Yeah, what do we got for don'ts? What
Don'ts.
are some highlights on what we
Well,
should?
number one is that you're too old to lift. That people say,
Ooh,
oh, it's too
that's
late to start.
no.
So that is definitely not the case. In fact, research shows very easily that just that process of not doing it to starting
Yeah.
is the biggest change that anyone will get at any age.
Mhm.
So it's never too late. If you haven't been in a gym recently, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised to see how many people that are in their 60s and 70s and 80s
Oh,
are actually in there training,
yeah.
which is amazing. So it's never too late. Um,
So start now.
so start now.
Right.
Like it.
Yeah, never too late. I agree. Couldn't agree more. I remember I did in my chiropractic school. I was I was doing a minor master's in strength and conditioning, and we did a research project on elderly strength conditioning, and it was amazing. The capacity to change was exactly as when you're young. So it's like it was fascinating the results. So don't sell yourself short. Start now. Um,
And
yeah,
the biggest changes for blood pressure, heart
everything,
rate reduction,
everything.
all the things you're looking for, those markers, the biggest change is
Uh,
the not at all to the started.
yeah, and it's
And
amazing.
then
Like
it starts to peter out.
we look for all these things. It's so funny the way the world markets to us, right? We'll look for all these things. We'll take all these pills and potions, and the best pharmaceutical industry we have is in your body when you lift weights. It's so crazy, and the changes that happen as a result of that. So you've got all the goods you need in there. It's just apply some, like you say, some focused weightlifting, and you will not be disappointed, right? We talked about never too old to start, risk for hip injury, right? So you're gonna gain confidence and get your life back essentially
Yep.
when you feel strong on your feet. Essentially, that's it.
Which leads into the next one is, and oftentimes I have people say that to me. Well, I'm just sticking with light weights. I don't want to get injured. I don't want to do too much.
Yeah.
Again, can't do that. The whole concept is what we talked about with Wolf's Law. Your body will react to the stresses we impose upon it. So certainly start that way.
Start
Start later than
slow.
you think you should,
Yeah.
to make sure it's done safely. Maybe a very generic kind of golden rule would be, let's say you're doing 3 sets of 10, then you should be able to do those sets of 10 and do them with great technique or perfect technique. And then when you can do 12 of each, then you would increase your weight. And
Exactly.
then you'd work up to 3 sets of 10, let's say. And then if you can do 3 sets of 12, oh, now I'm lifting, you're pushing more weight. The key for change is what they term progressive overload, is that you have to create a new stimulus for your body to then respond accordingly. Like we talked about, your body will respond to the different forces we impose upon it. So if you lift 5 pounds for bicep curls and you do that for 1 year, or you do 5 pounds and then you progress every 5 to 6 weeks where you're then using 7.5 or 10 and 12.5,
Hmm.
you will undoubtedly see bigger changes and bigger health benefits because of that.
Yeah, and don't sell yourself short. That's what we're kind of getting here is like actually seek out those edges, those boundaries, right? Because I always say, even in rehab, it's the same thing, right? It's like stick within your bubble, but slowly expand that bubble, right? So really, really push those edges because that's where change takes place, right? Yeah, resistance. You need to apply resistance. You need to get knocked down a bit. Essentially, when you think about working out, it's actually funny. You're actually getting weaker as the set goes on. So let's say you're doing, like you say, you're trying to do 8 reps and you pick a weight and you're going, it's easy. Oh, I got my first three, four, five. Then you're getting weaker as you progress through that set towards your eighth. And that eighth one, as Jason said, should be relatively good. Like you should have to work for it, but you should be still comfortable hitting that. And then your next set, yeah, you might be struggle to get to eight, and then your next set. But that's where you're in that bubble, and you're kind of you're just around the edges and you're pushing. If you blow pot by the 8, then you're way too light, right? So that's kind of a good gauge. But I would say you're a lot stronger than you're giving yourself credit for. So like,
Stats with that too. If you actually have a
yeah,
trainer or a spotter that watch you,
exactly.
you will definitely squeeze out more reps with someone there to
Yeah,
help you.
yeah,
And another way, actually, to piggyback on that too, is to document it. Right, the best way to do it is actually to write down what you're lifting, so you can compare back. Like, oh yeah, a month ago I was doing 20-pound dumbbells when I was doing those chest flies, and now I'm not. So you can see the progression.
yeah.
Or you did a set of 8, and then a set of 7, and then a set of 5, and you can see how you get to 3 sets of 8 or whatever. So it's never a bad thing to document and write down and
No.
see where you're at.
And remember, we said this doesn't happen once a month. This is consistency over time. So there might be some days where you're not feeling it, right? So you really want to listen to your body.
Yeah.
You might not have slept well. You might have had some emotional stress, right? Some mental stress. And your body, nowadays we have these wearables we can see. You might sleep with an Oura ring and it says, "Ooh, you did not sleep last night." Might not be the best day to push it in the gym. So listen to yourself, and you'll know when you're ready to go, and you'll know when I am going to take it light today. So that's okay too, right?
Yeah. I think the last don't would be, let's make sure we don't neglect your flexibility and your mobility. And that's just pretty self-explanatory, because if you want to do these compound lifts, these squats where you go, ass to grass, then if you don't have the flexibility and mobility, then you won't be able to do it. So, like anything else we do, yes, you want to have the strength training, but you want to have the mobility there too. Sean talked about, grips and hips. That's what you meant with the hip portion. Is do your stretches, right? Do a nice active dynamic warm up to start off, and when you're done, try to allot some time so that you can do some more passive stretching or more active stretching at the end to conclude, to try to work each joint or the big joints through a full range of motion.
Yeah.
And that will help you just, as the decades roll on here, it'll help us with all of our mobility stuff and keeping us limber to do the things we want to do.
Coolest thing about strength training and doing, proper range of motion when you're strength training is you will increase your flexibility as well, which is really cool. We think that you're gonna, just get tighten all up, right? But which is actually cool when you do full range of motion, and you almost, like we say, it's like you're greasing the groove. So I always say in my practice, and a lot of you have probably heard this, but motion is lotion. So as you take the body through range of motion, well, you start to lubricate your joints. You start to increase the heat of your tissues. You start to increase the circulatory system, right, to the area that's being stimulated, which is all part of the change that's going to take place, right? It's all part of the demands that you're actually asking the body to respond to. And well, guess what? Range of motion increases, right? So motion is lotion. And if you don't move, the flip side, this is one of my patients that came up with this one day a few years back. She said, "Oh, Sean, I figured out the opposite of motion is lotion." Well, if you don't move, you get dusty and rusty. And we've all felt that, right? You sit around for a while, too long, 10 years, whatever. You start to ankylose. Things start to, right, dry up. You get dusty and rusty.
Couple extra beers at Sunday night hockey.
Exactly.
Wake up a little stiff and sore.
And remember, like we say, the most important thing is to start now. It doesn't matter where you were. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. Start today, because we're all guilty of it. We, like I say, we were a phase of our life where we had multiple kids in a short span of time, and there's more demands on or I guess more just our schedules, right? So
Time.
more demands on our time, busy practice and whatnot. But we encourage each other here. We've done some cool challenges here at the clinic, 75 hard challenges and stuff. Jay and I are always checking in with each other every day. Oh, did you get your lift in today? Did you going for a run? What'd you do? We have a pull-up bar here at work. If you guys have looked down, if you've looked, sometimes I just get, if I can't work out at home, I'll do it here in between patients and clients. I'll do 5 pull-ups all day long between patients. So, or push-ups. We have push-ups here. We have a kettlebell here.
TRX.
Jay and I are working on Kevin. We want to get a little rehab. We're going to throw it into the universe so you guys can ask Kevin, "Oh, when's that little rehab?"